Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards, where no ship is safe from being called a cow. I know I've said this before, and I will probably say it again, and I will say it right now. Y'all humies be weird. And, in fact, some of the sub-comment threads of a recent video here on Sacred Cow Shipyards has really impressed upon me why I do not yet want to touch a specific universe, even though it is a very interesting universe and related to that particular video. Because holy fuck, y'all. That said, I will make a happy little deal with y'all. If you can get this channel to 100,000 subscribers, I will cheerfully delve into that particular universe and its implementation of dropships in the original correct version, and how badly some dumb shit director fucked up the wrong version, and how the dropships in that wrong version actually aren't that bad, which does not at all make up for the absolutely fucking asinine escape pods or capital ships. But, like I said, 100,000 subscribers, that's what it's going to take. So why 100,000 subscribers, you ask? Well, because once a channel in good standing here on YouTube hits 100,000 subscribers, they get a stupid plaque. Yeah, that's literally the whole reason. I mean, this whole channel started as a joke and remains mostly a joke, and it would just be fucking hilarious for me to get this stupid 100,000 subscriber plaque for doing a goddamn joke. I mean, that's the kind of thing I would mount on the almighty Cuber just for the shits and giggles. And at that point, y'all can cancel me or not. I don't give a f***. I got a cool plaque. But I imagine it's probably going to be a little while before we are able to accomplish that particular milestone. So in the meantime, on our Discord channel, we have been running something of a little competition to see if people can guess the subject of the current week's video just from whatever hint I drop. Y'all are currently running a 500 batting average, which I'm told is not great. Maybe it's my fault for making the hints a little too hard, but if you want to get in on the action, all you have to do is make a single solitary one currency unit payment to Patreon, and you will find the link for the Discord channel there. You don't even have to be a subscriber on Patreon. I am simply using this as a filter to keep the assholes out, since people don't normally pay for things that they're going to be a dick on, although I've been proven wrong about that in the past. What is the prize for getting the competition correct? Well, you're just going to have to find out, aren't you? And now I have to wonder how many people skipped past my rambling section of the video and missed out on this notice entirely. Oh well. So, since apparently I have been doing this for a year now, over a year now, the thought occurred to me that I should maybe go back and revisit the very first episode on this particular channel, which concerned the Venator class Star Destroyer. And, well, actually we're not going to talk about the Venator class again because it's a steaming pile of suck and fail. We are instead going to talk about how they could have, and in fact did, do that general concept right in the end. And that's by way of the Arquitens class light cruiser. Arquitens, whatever. I'll probably switch back and forth. You're just going to have to live with it. And in fact, we are going to talk about both the Arquitens light cruiser and the Arquitens command cruiser, because basically the only difference is one was built by the Old Republic and one was built by the Empire, and technically the Empire made some minor changes, mostly to the crew complement, but they're still fundamentally the same ship. And that ship is how you do something like a Venator just correctly on a much, much smaller scale. And by smaller, I mean a whole fucking lot smaller. In fact, the Arquitens is shorter than the Venator is wide. So this is probably not a fair comparison, but bear with me. So let's look at what I said about the Venator, and then look at how it applies to the Arquitens, because that just makes sense in my approximation of whatever passes for my head. So, for the Venator, the biggest problem in my personal eyes at the time, and even now, is the fact that its 8 primary guns are not superposed. They can't shoot past each other forwards. Now, yes, they have an amazing broadside capability, because you're going to catch 4 double turbo lasers, all at once, all at the same time. It's going to suck. But you don't really see broadsides a whole lot in Star Wars. You do periodically, but not a lot. Mostly you see ships driving at each other, and then the Venator can only bring 2 batteries to bear out of its 8. Yeah, that's efficient. The Arquitens solved that problem perfectly. Unlike the Venator, the Arquitens only has 4 double turbolaser batteries, and they're technically light turbolaser batteries as opposed to the heavy turbolaser batteries of the Venator. And yes, there is a medium class, so it's hard to really determine how powerful these particular guns are, but the important thing is the Arquitens can bring 4 guns to bear on any target ahead of it. In fact, it can bring 8 guns to bear, because again, we're talking about double turrets. Because there's only 2 on the dorsal side of the ship, and there's 2 on the ventral side of the ship. You don't even have to worry about superposing them. There's nothing to shoot past. They're just there. Now, technically, the Arquitens' broadside capability is only just 2 turrets, but that's still half of its turret complement, which is exactly the same as the Venator, half of the turret complement. The problem is, again, broadsides are not common in Star Wars. They drive at the target they're shooting at, and the Arquitens is massively more suited for that than the Venator was. Now, maybe, 2 double heavy turbo laser batteries are stronger than 4 double light turbo laser batteries. I don't know, I don't care. I just care that someone actually thought about the design this time. And I guess it's worth mentioning that when the Empire got their hands on the Arquitens cruisers, one of the upgrades they did to them was upgrade those double batteries to quad batteries. So maybe 16 light turbo lasers are as powerful as 4 heavy turbo lasers? Again, I don't know, don't care, whatever. Moving on from there, it's not really fair to compare the hangar capabilities of the Arquitens and the Venator simply because of the size difference. The Arquitens does actually have hangars, and typically has about 3 TIEs and 2 Lambda-class shuttles parked aboard it, normally, for the Empire-type Arquitens. So, again, not really a huge comparison between the Venator and that, because the Venator could just carry all the aircraft. But by the same token, the hangar on the Arquitens actually makes sense. It's not this massive gaping hole in the dorsal side of the hull. It's a traditional, underneath the ship, actually a fly-through hangar, which is kind of an interesting touch, as opposed to the fly-up-into hangar of the Imperial Star Destroyers. Also, the way it launches its fighters is somewhat peculiar and notable. It actually has, between those 2 front mandibles, a launch chute that it shoots the TIEs out of. Depending on the specific model, the TIEs can either be mounted between the mandibles, or there's actually a launch channel behind the mandibles that the TIEs can pop out of. So, yes, they did once again put a hangar on the front of the ship. At least this time it's not like the entire fucking spine of the ship. It's a little tiny hole that's somewhat protected by the mandibles around it. So, I don't know what it is with Kuat Drive Yards and putting their hangars in stupid fucking locations. And speaking of the limited spacecraft complement on the Arquitens, it does not have the secondary bridge that was so heavily featured on the Venator class, because it doesn't really need the secondary bridge to manage spacecraft around it. So that's a win! I mean, again, the bridge configuration of the Venator makes precisely no sense. Even if one of them is supposed to be the flight control flight ops tower, they still function as backups to each other if one were to fail, except if one were to fail, you're pretty much losing both anyways. So, again, it's just stupid. Now, I mean, the Arquitens does have the standard stupid Star Destroyer configuration of having the bridge dangling out in space on top of a stalk. And in fact, the Arquitens bridge specifically is a whole ton of glass, or whatever glass passes as in Star Wars. You don't need to see outside, guys, to run the ship. That's what cameras are for. That's what sensors are for. That's all that shit you have, all that technology. Put the bridge inside the hull, way deep down where it can't get touched. And speaking of putting things in weird locations, the Arquitens' drive system is just bizarre. It brings to mind the Consular class cruiser that the Jedi used to open quote-unquote negotiations with the Trade Federation back during the Nabooian conflict or whatever the hell. They're just hanging out behind the ship in these tin cans out there, just doing whatever. And technically, the dorsal turbolaser batteries are far enough stern to be able to get some coverage for the engines if they were to come under attack. But one of the other modifications the Empire did to the class when they took over is added some additional hull plating around the engines and actually some laser turrets back there to cover said engines, because, you know, they're kind of important. And likewise, on the Arquitens, there are still some features that just make absolutely no sense at all. I'm sure y'all remember the Mandalorian TV show or Disney Plus show that involved Gideon, Grand Moff Gideon, having an Arquitens class command cruiser and tooling around and kidnapping children and blah, 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 so on and so forth. Well, in the scene where the Mandalorians storm his cruiser, they have a specific sequence where they're walking through what looks like a cargo bay, except it doesn't have a floor. It's just a hatch out into space, and they're on a catwalk. The f*** is that? I mean, it's not the hangar. Like I said, the hangar is actually a fly-through with a floor, not the fly-up into like the ISDs. And if you look at the ventral surface of even the Empire-type Arquitens-class cruisers, there is no hole there with a weird little catwalk going across it. And even if there was, what would you use it for? The space to either side of the catwalk isn't big enough to even get a tie into. So is there like some little tiny cargo pod you can start shoving in there to store stuff? I mean, what the f*** is that even there for? Also, why the f*** does it not have railings? What is it with the Empire and its lack of railings? Anyways, is the Arquitens perfect? Of course not. It's a Star Wars ship. Most Star Wars ships just are patently horrible, though, and this one, honestly, it works okay. And what's truly fascinating is it really does seem like someone took a look at the Venator and was like, God, no, that's just dumb, and made something that is similar, naturally much, much smaller, but actually, you know, makes sense, and someone actually thought about how things might work on it, and someone actually put in enough effort to think about guns firing past each other, or to simplify it and, you know, protect the ventral side of the ship too, because the Venator didn't even do that. So, congratulations, Kuat. You finally got something that makes a certain degree of sense. I'm sure we'll talk about something you cock up again later, though. And speaking of cocking things up, one last point. What the ever-loving fuck is this? Apparently this is some sort of art style that humanity has for some reason adopted. And what the ever-loving shit? This is why aliens don't visit you fuckers. And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.